I got a theory on what you said there, which is I think a lot of marketers deep down don't want to know how effective the ad is. I think they struggle sometimes with the idea that culturally it's been incentivized to get it out. And I think really effective modern marketers are the ones who lean into the idea that actually knowing means you can do something about it, and it may be uncomfortable in the short term, but it's going to lead to the better outcome.
Welcome to Punchy by Rival, where we take the gloves off to share the hard-hitting realities of the challenger marketing world. Each week, we answer your burning questions, cut through the BS, and tell you what you need to know about the world of marketing to grow your brand, business, and career. All right, we're back with another episode of Punchy. It's interesting. I know these aren't going to both get released at the same time, but we're doing 2 episodes, 2 recordings this week, which I kind of like. This is fun. Good to see you all. And Barney, thank you so much for joining us. Barney Worfolk-Smith, who is a man of many marketing talents, but is currently plying his trade as the MD of EMEA at Daivid, a creative effectiveness tool which explains why advertising creative is effective or not. Barney, I have to ask, the pink flamingo. Can you explain the pink flamingo for us?
There he is. He's called Dave, and it's about our businesses helping other businesses stand out. And so there's like some boring brown bears, and there's us looking all flamboyant and like a big pink flamingo on the top. And we have the branding as well, just always wearing a flamingo.
I like it.
But that's what it's all about.
Well, as another company that also has pink as their primary color, we can relate on that. Go pink. All right. We got some good questions to dig into today. The first is, I'm going to Cannes for the first time. What's the best way to make the most of it? And what are the most impactful events to attend? I'm going to go to Jenna because Cannes is the thing that she loves to talk about the most and is really excited to reach out to people and ask them whether they're going to Cannes. Jenna, what is your advice for a first-timer going to Cannes this year?
Brace yourself. My advice is to brace yourself. I don't know. Last year was so hard. Last year was my first year. I don't know. It was
Can
so
I actually
different.
say, sorry to jump in. I just realized like we just assume everybody knows, but there might be some people who haven't worked in advertising agencies or big brands. Cannes, the creative advertising festival that happens every year in Cannes, France. And Jenna, continue, please.
Yeah. I feel like I went completely unprepared. Like last year, had like RSVP'd for a couple events. I was like, oh, I'm going to try and like meet up with these people. I tried to schedule like a bunch of things. And it was a complete mistake, right? Like I had gotten like some advice. People were like, oh, double book every single slot, like, do like all these things. And maybe that is good advice. I feel like this year, I've tried to go back in with the purpose of, okay, I want to accomplish like 4 things. Like I have like a very tailored list of, I want to meet with people in the sustainability space. I've identified like 2 to 3 like vendors and potential partners that I've already kind of had relationships with, there. I want to advance like a couple of our potential platform and like tech partnerships. Okay, great. I got to go meet these guys kind of deal. And this year, I think just being much more focused and realistic about what am I trying to accomplish, that realistically for us, at least, like I think that the purpose of us going is much more about, relationship building, like seeing and like meeting some other people rather than trying to go with an angle to get business, because I'm going to tell you that nobody wants to be sold to at Cannes. That is not the vibe. Those are not the vibes on the Croisette. And then like honestly spending the rest of the time like trying to again keep up with like social professional relationships of like, hey, not just screwing around in gutter bar, which there may be some of that, but it's still like like there is still something to be said of like, hey, you probably have like your cohort of like other agency or brand side talent that maybe those people are not yet in like budget or decision making positions, but are still kind of your like wider network a little bit. And so this year I've kind of picked my event strategy of okay, what are some of the things that are in line with what I want to accomplish, and what will my like friends in my like sort of broader like network cohort like go with me, like Mario and I from a previous job. That was also named after an animal and did not do as much fun stuff with their branding as a flamingo does, which I think is just a real shame. I like kudos to Dave for doing stuff with a flamingo because that's such a fun animal. Anyways, picking stuff that like Mario or some of my other friends are like, hey, like let's go to the Microsoft beach together, or like let's go to do this thing together. I'm kind of like picking events that are, like offer that opportunity to go do kind of networking stuff with my, with my friends a little bit. I don't know how good that advice is because I still don't know what the fuck I'm doing at Cannes. I feel like I'm about to get rocked this year for like a second time, but at least I've like done my meditation where I'm like, all right, like just, it's like a wave, just let it wash over you. Like, we'll see how it goes. Yeah, that's me.
So DuBose, I know that the combination of an overnight bus from Rome, 4 days in Cannes, and then 3 days at Glastonbury nearly killed you last year. What is your plan for survival besides shopping every day at the Monoprix this year?
Guys, the Monoprix is not just a store, it's a way of life. So that is step one. As Eric alluded to, my biggest piece of advice is make sure you take reliable transport to get there. My Wizz Air flight was canceled out of Rome last year. I had to take a 24-hour bus from Rome to Nice, and then from Nice to Cannes, which did not set me up for success on the Monday morning. I can tell you that. But generally this year, I would say, and for anyone who's doing Cannes for the first time, approach it as you would approach other events. If you've ever been to Glastonbury, one of the things about Glastonbury is there's a wonderful website called Clash Finder that comes out, lists all the bands, tells you where there are clashes. They do not have one of those for Cannes. Make your own. Just understand what you want to see, what you're willing to sacrifice, what you want to learn from, and go that way. One of the other things we can learn from, Burning Man. If you've ever been to Burning Man, one of the things there is no money. There are only goods you can trade. Think about Cannes as something where you trade your time for rosé and canapé. Your time is valuable. The rosé and canapé is what's being traded for. Also learning. So, what I would say is make sure you're really intentional with what you want out of it, but then also very flexible and open with how you give your time away, but just make sure you hit the things you want to hit, back to the Clash Finder point. Also, one of the things I personally always recommend, going on Sunday night. Everyone's super happy then. It's like the day before Christmas or the Friday before Christmas in the UK. And then get out Thursday, or people are saying Friday is the new amazing day of it. I think that is a lie. Also, if you fly quickly on Thursday morning, you can be in Somerset for Glastonbury by Thursday evening, which is my biggest recommendation for Cannes, because you really need to balance out the pro-consumerism, yay, marketing is amazing, bit of Cannes by going to something that basically talks about how evil the profession would be. So yeah, those are mine. Good luck to anyone who's going. Come find us. I pronounce every French word wrong. So I pronounce croissant like it's croissant witch. So I will be pretty easy to spot. But merci and arrivederci. So
Do you pronounce your own name wrong, DuBose?
I'm like, Dubois. I do. But then everyone's like, ooh, Dubois. And then I proceed to butcher the language for 5 minutes until I'm asked to leave the boulangerie.
Lean into it, DuBose. C'est Geneviève, c'est moi en France. Like, as you lean into it, like be Dubois. I can be Geneviève, you can be Dubois. It's fine. Yeah.
Oh, bonjour.
I actually think that I'm the only one without a French name between the
you
three
can be
of us.
Eric Fulwiler when we go to Germany, yeah.
I dominate in Germany and Switzerland. Barney, I'm curious, of course, if you have any tips. I know you're a Cannes veteran, but also some of the people listening maybe don't run their own business and can't just decide to go. For those who want to partake in the learnings, as well as the canapés and the rosé, how would you convince your agency head or your CMO to send you to Cannes next year?
Well, I've never been to Cannes.
No. I thought I saw you last year.
Well, that tells you a lot about Cannes, right?
I just assume you're everywhere.
No, and I am normally omnipresent. And I'm hoping now I've reached an age where I can avoid ever having to actually go. But the advice that DuBose and Jenna have just given actually highlights the specific problem about the amount of noise and the reason why I've chosen for the investment of time and effort that I make and the planning I put into events. I think about what I'm going to get out of it at the end. And I get more out of other things, more targeted, smaller, more events focused around particular things, around performance world or AI or whatever it might be. I get a lot more out of rather than the massive hullabaloo of Cannes where you can get lost. So in terms of trying to persuade bosses to give you the budget to go, have one hell of a plan of who you're going to hit up and what you're going to get out of it is what I would say.
All right. So maybe we'll see you next week, or I think this is actually getting released next week. So maybe we'll see you this week, or maybe like Barney, you've gotten to a stage where you recognize or are in a position where you don't have to go. You don't have to go. All right,
It's like
moving
the
on.
movie. It's like that movie War Games where they're like, "How do you win?" And it was like, "Just don't play." It was like, "How do you do can? Just don't go." Barney, I like it. You've taken yourself out of the equation.
DuBose, we've spoken about this. How do you can jack? You know,
No, we should make our own Glastonbury conflict clash app for can. That should be our can.
Oh, by the way.
We should edit this out because that's a really good idea, and we don't want somebody to steal that.
We're in a URL, canlion.com, which I keep threatening to do something with every year, and I never get around to doing it. So we'll figure something out.
Synergies. Yeah.
All right, let's move on. Question 2. I am a Series A startup marketing director. Budgets have been slashed, and it looks like we won't be able to raise another round anytime soon. But I still need to deliver growth. How should I prioritize my budgets, and how do I know what to keep and what to axe from my plans? DuBose, you want to kick this one off?
So I think one of the things that always strikes me with questions like this is, look, there is no easy answer. I'm not going to come out and say, actually, this is a gift and it focuses the mind, or that strategy comes from sacrifice, because all those things are true, but they can also be incredibly terrifying and annoying when you're in the position of having to execute them. One of the things I would say when it comes to lean resources is it does require you to go back and go, what directly delivers growth and what has the highest probability for growth? Twitter's Tom Roach had a quote I trot out quite a lot that is about a strategy is increasing the probability of success. And I think one of the things I would say when you're dealing in any capacity, but especially in a capacity of a smaller organization or an organization seeking rapid growth with limited resource, is you need to be laser focused on what delivers that and what you feel is going to have the highest probability. Nothing is assured. And I imagine the person who asked this question is acutely aware of that, because as you start to have to put more of your chips on less of the roulette wheel, it becomes more and more worrying. But I think going back to that idea that the best you can do is refine the strategy, cut out the bits that you feel aren't going to directly deliver growth right now, or the objectives that you want to get to, and then be comfortable with the idea that you've increased the probability as much as possible and try to execute that plan is going to be key. I think the other thing is learning as fast as possible on resource. And one of the things I always see when it comes to strategic development, to marketing, is resource allows you to have more time to learn and then adapt. With less resource, you have less time to adapt. So just don't make the same mistake twice, and really set up monitoring and understanding where possible to go, this isn't working, we need to shift or we need to adapt, and become as lean as possible in that sense. But there is no easy answer to this. There are always a lot of platitudes and quotes that come along with low resource, high risk marketing. But generally it's just a game of trying for the best with what you have and preparing for the worst.
Jenna, what would you add?
Yeah. I definitely agree with DuBose that there's no clear answer. Like, if I had an obvious answer to this question, we would all be millionaires and we wouldn't have to do a podcast because we would have made so much money that we have retired somewhere. I think that probably the biggest thing, that advice that I would offer, is to avoid the trap that, and I see this a little bit less now, of reducing to, well, again, we can only be in the channels that we know drive profitability, of okay, well, it's paid search, that's again, our lower funnel, kind of performance, social. I was actually just looking at some research that I saw through some friends of ours over at Magic Numbers and Grace Kite, but actually this research was done with in conjunction with ThinkBox and in the Accelerator group about essentially, what are the drivers of advertising profitability. Unfortunately, for smaller companies, brand size is always the thing that drives really outsized profitability. But other things, like I said, creative quality and essentially budget setting across markets are really big ones. And so I think that if there are constraints about these things, I think that it's oftentimes, again, finding opportunities for that kind of price arbitrage. If you're lucky enough to be a multi-market brand, okay, maybe you can't afford to deliver growth in the US and the UK right now, given how expensive those markets are. Do you have secondary geos, or even within the US, can you limit kind of your geo control and budgeting to kind of go after less expensive, or again, areas where you're seeing that kind of growth? The other thing that I've kind of been seeing is, we frequently see now that, CPAs and costs on essentially the duopoly of Google and Facebook are really high now. I remember that there was a huge time when like Facebook was like wildly undervalued, but I think like very quickly the market has like is catching up and has caught up in a lot of verticals about like CPMs on Facebook are comparable to what they are like in television in some places, and especially with, you know, restrictions on targeting and a couple other things, I don't necessarily know if that's worth it. There are so many opportunities now for smaller like ad networks in like really like highly qualified places that like there's, you know, tech solutions that more and more small publishers like marketplaces, fintechs, like networks, or these types of things can very easily spin up like kind of ad networks. And their prices are significantly lower. And if you have good automation set up for some of the big like solved platforms like Google and Facebook, spend your time on some of the lower cost, you know, kind of fringe opportunities of like, you know, find again, like where, you know, like, you know, we're going to talk about retail media in a little bit, like how many, you know, e-com and retail marketplaces have spun up ad networks these days. You know, make your brand feel like a really big brand by placing yourself in places that like only other big brands would, where actually there's still like a pretty significant cost differential to what you can achieve versus other places. Like I say, you know, focus on your creative quality. Like I say, look for opportunities to make your brand feel bigger, you know, find, like I say, opportunities for those price arbitrage in, you know, smaller markets and a couple other things. And as to how to assess that, everybody has to deal with like the attribution problem like on their own a little bit. Like there's plenty of good like free and like low cost tools for it if you're not like yet at a media mix marketing place, but kind of looking at, you know, your top line numbers. Is my traffic going up? Is my conversion rate going up? You know, basically spinning up a pretty straight metrics tree of I see sessions, I see checkouts, conversions, like these types of things, and keeping it very simple, you know, with kind of like test and control strategies is what I think is good. That was a little bit of a ramble at the end, but yeah.
Yeah, it's a good ramble. And I just want to give a shout out to the Pufferfish Challenger report, Spark report from last year that DuBose and the team put together, because that concept and that like actual strategy of how do you spend small amounts in big channels to appear bigger than you are. I mean, that was something that came out of, you know, one of the roundtable dinners that we hosted. And I think they were a Series A or maybe even seed startup that was buying TV, but kind of fractional programmatic, and were able to make their brand seem bigger and also more trustworthy because of where they showed up. I think the only other thing I'd add is, you know, I think just like really looking at the 20/80 on both sides of things. So the 20% that's going to create 80% of the output, make sure that you're quintupling down on that, not just doubling down on that, but also from a cost perspective, what's 20% of the cost and is it driving 80% of the output? So looking at that kind of top line growth, but also bottom line cost, and making sure that that's as balanced as possible.
I just wanted to add and build on what Jenna had said. That report putting creative as the 12x multiplier of profitability, I saw that as well. Love it. That's our language. And I'd just seen something at the weekend. You might have seen me post about it on LinkedIn about Liquid Death. To keep it on the festival vibe, I was at Download Festival, which is heavy metal, and they have the very heavy metal looking design. And, you know, they don't spend much on advertising at all. But in terms of the 4 Ps of marketing, the product, price, and placement, I've never seen anything like it. It was, I mean, admittedly, it was a steaming hot day for the whole festival, and people needed water badly. However, once they had it in their hands, it was just the most perfect leveraging of their creativity and their brand and their product to leapfrog anything else. People wouldn't have given a monkeys about bottles of Evian, but the Liquid Death somehow was like a badge of honor, and it was a perfect placement. So wise use of your brand to punch above your weight.
So Barney, a nice reference to the title of the show. Well done there. I want to stick with you for the next story, which I know you wanted to comment on. So Apple released their Vision Pro AR/VR headset. We all know about the headlines, what it's going to do, what it's going to cost, $3,500. But for marketers, what are the implications for us, and what do we need to start prepping for when it comes to AR, VR as a potential channel? What do those strategies need to look like?
Yeah. I mean, the reason I wanted to pipe up about this is like all of us, you know, I'm in love with VR and AR and always have been, because it represents a slice of the sci-fi world that I was promised when I was a kid and it's still not quite there. If you focus on the Apple Vision Pro itself, I mean, it looks fantastic and it's the best yet. I absolutely love it. If anyone can fix some of the UX problems of the VR/AR mixed reality, and make a headset just sexy enough, to be honest, that people are going to want to buy in mass markets, then it's Apple. But as you said, Eric, on the actual marketing front, you've got to come back to the realities of the numbers and the size of the market, etc. So IDC said that actual figures were down last year. 8.8 million headsets were shipped last year, apparently, which is 20% down from 2021. And, you'd think during the pandemic, if ever that was the time for people to start buying headsets, then it would have been during that time. So I'm still quite cynical about it, even though I love it. A price point of $3,500 also is, I'm going to do it again, so punchy that I can't see it driving mass uptake. It might have a halo effect. It might make people go, hey, wow, that's so cool that I want a piece of that world, and it will drive Oculus sales or HTC Vive sales or whatever else. So I just can't quite see it. So this used to land on my desk in a previous life when I was at the social creative agency quite a lot. And whenever anything new turned up, my advice was always the same. It's, within your marketing budgets, you've got 70% to spend on bread and butter, 20% for test, 10% for mad shit. And in my mind, it still lives in the mad shit arena. And for any given period of time, we'll see. And my advice would be, if you are thinking about getting into that world and your brand is relevant enough to do so, then go in VR, AR experiences, mainly gaming, and explore those as to how you can actually be present in that world, rather than worrying trying to do anything individual as a brand, because it's just too costly and not going to reach enough people.
Yeah, I think I'll be walking into an Apple store to try it out, but I do not expect that I will be walking out with one. But I don't think it'll be too hard to make it better than the Oculus, which is shit, in my opinion.
I might be buying one for my son for Christmas.
Oh my God, don't. Well, how old is he?
He's 11.
Okay, maybe. I would say it's there's really not that much to do on it, at least stuff that actually works and is interesting. And also my kids are a little bit younger. My oldest is 11. But oh my God, having to deal with kids of they can't get it on right. The headset needs to get adjusted. If you have kids that can't handle it on their own, it is torture, not only a crappy piece of technology and software, in my opinion. But Jenna, what do you think?
Isn't there I don't know. I feel like the biggest actual obstacle to the adoption of this technology is the literal latency between visual inputs in our brain perceiving these things. Wasn't that a huge problem with Oculus of prolonged periods of using it cause significant nausea because of the slight disconnect? But I mean, how long did you use it?
Well, I mean, how long are you going to be using it for? I don't think we're anywhere, and I don't really know from a technical perspective, but it doesn't seem like we're anywhere near the, we live in a virtual world reality where we've got it strapped to our face all the time. It's gaming. It's gaming, maybe something social, maybe some type of entertainment. But if you just look at what they're putting out, it's not that type of thing. And I do think that Oculus has solved for a lot of that. I don't know. I actually read a really interesting book recently about kind of the founding of Oculus and how they solve for a lot of that. I didn't experience that. I know that some people do, but I did not.
I wonder
Sorry, you go ahead, dude. Go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, to your earlier point, the movie Ready Player One would be really different if 2 hours of it was just trying to get the headset on fidgeting 11-year-olds going, this is shit. But I think there's a really interesting point there, which is, what we're talking about right now is gaming. What we're not talking about is substantive uses of it in a way that's being pitched by the creators, be that the legless world that is Meta, or be that what Apple's going to try to do, setting it up as extended desktops, productivity, immersive worlds, kind of social and viewing in a way that hasn't been done so far. And I think, Barney, you hit the nail on the head on things like this. It's very costly to move that behavior, so costly that I think some of the world's largest corporations are going to take quite some time to do it. If anyone can, Apple can, given that their cash reserves are larger than most countries. But I think there's a point here that if you're a brand that's not Apple-sized, generally you've got to ask yourself pretty quickly, what's the value in this for me? Is it something that I can dip in and make a foil in my messaging? Like if you look at all the AI comms at the moment, there are more people going, haha, this was made by ChatGPT than there are actually using ChatGPT well. And I think for a lot of technologies, where you're going to end with this is making a piece of content about it, using it as a brand foil. But for those who actually want to use it as a proper engagement channel, I think it is going to be, is it right for you? Is gaming the way in? Or is this something where it speaks to just waiting for the right opportunity, but being ready for it? Because I think a lot of people see something like this and they go, Apple's released a headset. We got to make something about this tomorrow. And you're like, actually, this is something that's going to be an ongoing conversation. And right now might not be the right moment.
There is a literal Wikipedia article that is entirely about the topic of motion related or VR related, like motion
I'm not saying
sickness.
I'm not saying it's not a thing.
Yeah, but I think that's like ultimately like why would you adopt a technology that makes you like ill with prolonged like usage? Like I mean, I
we
guess
will
but
never have
I've
the
heard-
Matrix with motion sickness like this. If I'm sitting in
Everything
my
I've
pod
heard-
wearing this thing for 24 hours a day, I'm going to quit. I'm just going to walk out
Everything
of that
that
little
I've
robot
heard
pod.
is that has been, they made significant progress against that. A lot of people don't
I'm sure
experience
that
it in
you
the way
heard
they
that at
use
the
it.
sales booth for Oculus. Yeah, that they've solved all the motion sickness problems.
There's no sales booth for
You strike me as a man
There
that
probably
needs
is
a
a
virtual
cam,
reality
actually.
headset.
No, I mean,
can
to
see-
me, look, none of us really know, but it seems to me like that is something that's going to get solved, if it not largely is already. That's not a real sentence, but I tried. Shall we move on to our next story? What's next for the retail media gold rush? Amazon's ad business is one of the fastest growing, most profitable units in the whole group. Is this a sign of things to come, or is retail media already at its peak, Jenna?
I don't fucking know. I don't know. So like at its peak, I have no fucking idea. I have no fucking idea if it's at its peak. I guess I'll answer this a little bit more like substantively.
No, I think that was fine. Let's move on.
Wait, it's fine. It's fine to say I do not know whether or not retail media will continue to peak. That's first of all, that's true. It has the benefit of being true that I absolutely do not know that. However, my educated best guess is I think it's going to continue. I think it's going to continue to grow. In particular because like it's now I think like hitting a point where some of the particular placements that we see from other retail media networks, like not just Amazon, but like I say from other like retailers and partners, where it's like actually in some cases like retail media at certain like locations can function as an out of home placement, right? Where it doesn't even have to be for products, product sales specifically. So I definitely think that there's, tons and tons of headroom like in the retail like media like growth side of things for like those types of use cases where it's like increasingly we'll just think of those as additional placements, again, similar to out of home and a couple other things. But I do think it's going to change. Like I also like saw today, I think that there was, I think it was like referred to as leaked, but I don't know that it's really leaked, of like an internal Amazon like deck. Maybe it was published. I don't remember what the verb was, of like 67 use cases for AI, essentially how Amazon, much like Microsoft and Google, is going to be looking to essentially update their search results with the use of AI for things like, being able to do brand comparisons like between certain things, or, like profile of certain types of people who buy this product versus other and why they kind of prefer it. So I think it will definitely change, much the same way that paid search advertising will change, of like, hey, is it going to be, absolutely like just like paid product placements or like, paid like, search results, or is it going to be, do we have to do things like to make sure that we're kind of, showcasing our brand in a certain way, like for the learning sets for how AI will do our product comparisons and like those types of things. I don't know. Yeah, it's probably a pretty safe bet to assume that like every single other fucking digital advertising channel for the last like 10 years, the line for retail media is going to go up and to the right. I guess I feel confident saying that. Yeah.
Are there any categories or businesses, Jenna, that you'd say outside of the obvious ones like retail, CPG, the ones that already have Amazon as part of their strategy? Are there any others that should be looking at retail media and something like Amazon specifically, maybe as more of that 20 or 10 bucket? Does that fit into anybody's strategy?
I think that this is like super interesting for like kind of like, and I admit this is just kind of a wild hair that I have. We haven't necessarily tried this out with clients, so I'm talking out of my ass on this one. But I think that in particular for like maybe more like high ticket like B2B or like professional services ones, that like again looking at placements for more affluent like grocery stores or like retail partners like in areas like where those look like where like there's the Whole Foods literally downstairs from Twitter's office like in central London, right, where every single Twitter employee like goes to get their lunch like down like at the Whole Foods. Well, not maybe this was a bad example because Twitter employs 5 people and a chicken now, but other companies that do well that have like premium like grocery stores like near them right? Like, especially, yeah, as we talk about like brands trying to make themselves like larger than they are, like especially like in B2B advertising, like, yeah, like go hit your target market where you know that they're going to be like buying their $13. I buy grocery store sushi. It's delicious. I can't really hate on it. Like their delicious grocery store sushi lunch, you know what I mean? Or like other things that people buy. Yeah. So I don't know. I think like those types of things, like I say, where it's like, it's difficult sometimes to kind of, find those people other places, or it's only in really crowded spaces of like, do I want to pay $60 LinkedIn CPMs, or am I willing to pay, I don't know what it is, like an $8 CPM for, some like checkout placements at like a reasonably big, kind of more affluent, place that has an Instacart integration near, Palo Alto or something. I think that's a really interesting use case.
Barney, were you going to jump in?
Yeah, quick one. Tell from the front line. I was at the ICOM Smart Data Marketing Summit, which could potentially have been very dry, but it was in Malaga, so that was good. But I sat at a round table run by Coty, specifically on the topic of retail media integration. And there were loads of global analytics heads from places like Reckitt, Jaguar Land Rover, a variety of people. And the general word from Coty was that, hell yeah, it's going to continue to grow because it works. There had been a little bit of pain in the integration technically and trading, but that's getting ironed out and getting through its painful adolescence. And there were general nods of approval and agreement from around the room from all of these people around it.
All right. Should we move on to rants and raves? Jenna, I'm going to give you a chance if you want. You don't have to rant about the question that we did not get to today about Live Golf and PGA, but we can also bump that to next week. But what do you want to do? I'll let you go first either way.
Oh, that's tough. Oh shit, I don't know. All right, yeah, I guess I will because I did not prepare for this. I guess I'm surprised by the same segment that we've had in every single one of these that we filmed since the beginning, and I'm never prepared for. I guess kind of like it's both a rant and a rave about like this Live and like PGA like merger. On the one hand, I think that this is an incredible rant about like a little bit of like the rocket or like the tried and true business tactic of copy exactly what somebody else is doing, but do it 5% better, steal an undeniable amount of their market share, and then fuck them. Like, that's kind of like, it's kind of admirable. Like, I kind of am like, all right, like, well played to you guys. However, of course, then the rant part is, oh, but it's shitty people did it. It's really tough to like admire that like the Saudi backed like royal family like did this thing. So I guess like rant, really, really appreciate the kind of admittedly a little bit cutthroat, like ruthless, but like copy what works, just do it 5% like better. Absolutely incredible. Rant. Greenwashing is bad and it fucking sucks. Related to, I'm so sick of hearing about Man City. Oh my God. If that team got wiped off the face of the earth tomorrow, I would be like really thrilled about it. I'm absolutely sick of, like I say, if so frequently Middle Eastern governments essentially coming in and trying to greenwash their reputation with sports, not even necessarily for any ethical reasons, although I absolutely have all of those objectives, because it makes the game so boring. Just coming in and wildly overpaying for like the most talent possible, right? And like taking like teams and fans and like enjoyment of the game away from people, I think fucking sucks. And I really like hate it. And I actually hope that it represents a big opportunity for like lower tiers of like amateur or like, semi-pro or amateur sports, because I think like professional sports with this is like, it's outrageous. I can't believe that European sports don't have salary cap regulations like American ones do. That was a bonus rant.
So you're saying there's an opportunity for pickleball to come in, and
there's never an opportunity for pickleball to go anywhere. Pickleball is the 6th Twitter employee in Jenna's list next to the chicken and the 5 others. So,
DuBose, what do you got?
So I would love to rave this week about a campaign in the States from noted fine dining establishment Chili's. I've been growing up in Alabama. Chili's is a place that is near and dear to my heart. For anyone who hasn't experienced it, it's somewhere between O'Charlie's and Ruby Tuesdays in the grand scheme of mall dining, where you get to sit down and someone speaks to you.
You need to remember that we're a Texas Roadhouse company here, DuBose.
We are a Texas Roadhouse company. So I don't engage with any of this.
Exactly.
But I saw the neighbors going, and they were talking about the idea that there's a brilliant campaign by the agency Mischief that basically has encouraged couples to start proposing at Chili's. I think what they had noticed is someone proposed, and then they basically got some influencers to do it as well. And they came out and basically said the next 3 couples that propose in a Chili's get a sizzling fajita bar catered wedding, excluding alcohol, for their actual wedding. And now loads of people have proposed at a Chili's. And I really love this for a few reasons. I think it's fun to find the things that occur with your product that may naturally make you slightly uncomfortable, or go, that's inane, why would we care about that? And then do something with it. And B, I think culturally it really reaches the vibe for where we are right now, in a bit of an economic conundrum where you're like, yeah, in boom times, it may be a bit weird that Chili's has brought the sizzling fajitas to celebrate our love, but weddings are expensive and money is hard to come by right now. So I think it does austerity in a way that doesn't feel austerity, and it leans into something that naturally was going to happen at a restaurant anyway. I had a friend who got engaged at an Outback Steakhouse, no rules, just love. And I think, one of the things there is Outback never celebrated that. So I think celebrating the weird and wonderful things people do with your brand is what makes a brand amazing. And I think this is a really smart piece of PR and a campaign that they put together in the States. It's made it all the way to the Today program, national news. I think I'd be intrigued to see if they make it some kind of permanent staple, to where maybe you get a $50 gift card if you propose in a Chili's, because that'd be enough for some folks. I might or might not be one of them if I wasn't already married. So there you go. But yeah, I really, really love the thinking on this.
But they don't cover the bar?
Well, I mean, that's going to be where they get you, right? Fajitas are all sizzle,
but for 3
probably
weddings,
less
they could
steak.
cover the bar. They could cover the alcohol for 3 weddings. That's outrageous. It's outrageous.
But I think if you want to make it a sustainable long-term thing, you got to lay the groundwork now. You can't do the alcohol for some and not the alcohol for others. The alcohol is where they get you at the weddings. That's what I've seen.
Barney, over to you. Rant or
Wow.
rave?
I'm actually going to break the convention and tell you a story, but
Ooh.
it does relate to advertising, even though you might not think it does at the beginning. So, my great uncle Dave, who's an old guy, a bit of a
I love
character,
this already.
he bought a vintage banjo, which needed a little bit of work. And down at the golf club, to his old mates, he started talking about, bought this banjo. And basically, he realized he was going to have to learn how to play it. But of course, learning how to play a banjo when you're 83 or whatever is fucking difficult. So he was trying to find ways of procrastinating. So what he did was he bought an old vintage banjo case, and then spent ages tinkering with the vintage banjo case, because that meant he didn't then have to learn to play the banjo. And he even said he was hoping that he might die before he had to actually learn to play the banjo. Now, here comes the relevance. So the corner of the advertising world that I work in is that of advertising effectiveness, right? And within that, there is this massive and disproportionate amount of effort and attention on understanding the media. And to Jenna's point earlier about that study that came out this week from Accelero, the second most important thing other than brand size that you can do is understand the fucking creative. It's incredibly obvious to me. And the amount of efforts this entire industry spends on fixing a banjo case and not learning how to play the banjo, it staggers me. It drives me insane on a daily basis. But thankfully, we're teaching people how to play the banjo.
Am I the banjo case? I'm the banjo case in this analogy. That's upsetting.
What, pure banjo case?
Media. I'm the media. This media side. Media is the banjo case. I'm the banjo case. I'm fine with that, actually. That's fine.
The ability to codify and understand creative now exists through, actually, delivered mainly by the power of applied AI. And so why not try and understand that? There's, according to the Nielsen Catalina stats from years ago, it's 47% of the actual effectiveness output of an ad campaign. So why ignore that and just focus on trying to fix you don't remember the ad unit that you saw, do you? You remember the proposal in the Chili's. That's the thing that you remember. Anyway,
everyone always remembers the proposal in the Chili's, Barney. It's a conversation for another time, but I got a theory on what you said there, which is I think a lot of marketers deep down don't want to know how effective the ad is. I think they struggle sometimes with the idea that culturally it's been incentivized to get it out. And I think really effective modern marketers are the ones who lean into the idea that actually knowing means you can do something about it, and it may be uncomfortable in the short term, but it's going to lead to the better outcome. I don't have a banjo case metaphor, just uncomfortable truths in my own banjo case, metaphorically.
I'm not going to build on what you've said, DuBose, because I'm in danger of saying something that I will then want edited out later. But yes, I agree.
Can I just say, one of my rants is everything that you're saying, Barney, but also how you described what you do now, which is you work in a corner of our industry that is about effectiveness. How is the whole thing not about effectiveness? This is something I've been in this industry for a long time now. I still just don't understand. And like what you say is true. It is a corner of the industry. There are specific specific award shows that you apply for if you want it to be about effectiveness. And then there's everything else that is somehow not. So I just don't know.
You're going to be there at Cannes next week with one particular definition of effectiveness, which I'm not 100% convinced is effective.
Also, who cares? Think about how many fucking VC-backed startups like are in business and like successful despite not being profitable. Effective is relative, Eric.
Oh, no, hold on. Profitability and effectiveness are two different things.
I'm saying that like it's money? Not limited. I'm saying that it's not limited to advertising that people focus on the wrong thing, right? Like that it's like, okay, yeah, like it's not just us. We're not the only ones afflicted with like, what the fuck is the point of this? Yeah.
I think I see wildly existential. But my thing is, marketing is a means to an end, and the end is driving the growth of a business. Therefore, how is not all marketing about effectiveness of doing the job that it's designed and there and invested in to do? How are there other conversations about other things that are just outside of that? But I think a lot of it, I mean, it's human beings. I think everything that you said of like a lot of people maybe don't care, to put it maybe in a not nice way, and maybe it's not part of their remit, or I don't know. But it's just, that's the thing that always surprises me. And even with the research that we're releasing for Cannes, that's like broadly about effectiveness and what the world, this bubble that goes down to Cannes every year, thinks and feels about the real world versus the actual real world and consumers. I just don't know how it's all not about that. I get surprised every time, even after all these years.
Well, I hope it's a very positive year at Cannes this year. I hope there's positivity reigns for those
as this conversation has shown, it is all positivity and sunshine here, not some kind of weird Al Gore uncomfortable truth of marketing. But I think, to Eric, to your point, it's the interesting thing, right? Like I think there's a designer listening to this right now in a well manicured and well topography set room that's very angry thinking about craft. And I think the one thing I would want to tack on at the end of this is I think there should be awards about craft. Craft can be something that is an interesting conversation alongside, but not always naturally directly next to effectiveness. But I think those two things being balanced out is going to be the interesting conversation. And if you have strong thoughts on this, find Eric Fulwiler or either of us next week. He would love to chat to you about this any time of the day, any place, like a street fight, but not actually a street fight.
As long as it's before 9 p.m., then I'm good.
He gets sleepy. Do not approach this man after 9 p.m. He's like a bear in November. He just wants to find a cave.
All right. I think on that note, we're going to leave it here because we are out of time. Barney, thank you so much for joining us. It was great to see you. And maybe I'll pretend to see you again this year.
Who is it that you saw that's not Barney?
I don't know. I think it's what he said. Like, I just feel like Barney's everywhere.
In our hearts.
Thank you for having me, guys.
All right. I never know how to end these episodes, so we're just going to cut it there. Goodbye. Punchy is a production of Rival. We are a growth consultancy that builds challenger brands, strategies, and capabilities to disrupt categories. If you want to learn more about us, check out wearerival.com. If you want to connect with Jenna, DuBose, or myself, email us at media@wearerival.com or find us on LinkedIn. If you enjoyed today's show, please subscribe, share with anyone you think might enjoy it, and leave us a review. Thanks so much for listening, and see you next week.